Why are some villains more iconic than others? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda McKnight, aka VampX13, but you can call me Vampy. Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics around underrated villains. Let me know which villains you'd love to see featured more, and see if you can guess who takes the top spot as we count down the top 10 most underrated Marvel villains. Number 10, Kang the Conqueror. While the future of Kang in the MCU is extremely uncertain, with Jonathan Majors being removed from future projects, the fact remains that in the comics, Kang is an extremely underappreciated villain. This is likely because not as many modern comics fans know how deadly Kang can be. If you are more a fan of the MCU, or if you are more of a modern day comic book collector and reader, you might have missed out on some of Kang's most epic stories and most deadly moves when it comes to him facing the Avengers. Although I will say that comics have been hinting at his power in recent years, if you know where to look. Kang is typically an Avengers villain. While he might look ridiculous on paper, many of us comic book fans know to respect him, as Kang is a master of time who has defeated an insane number of Avengers across the multiverse. I'm not as worried for the character's future in the MCU, because the other cool thing about Kang is that he's a time traveler, and as a result, he has many different looks and identities through the years. So it's possible that he could actually be anyone hiding in disguise, laying in wait for the right moment to reveal himself and strike. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9, the Lizard. The Lizard is a villain who often gets overlooked when it comes to Spider-Man fans. Why is this? Because not many people know just how dark and deadly the Lizard can be, and perhaps because the Lizard's alter ego, Curt Connors, is known for being a good man and a scientist. But that doesn't mean there isn't darkness lurking beneath the surface, even with as well-intentioned a man as Connors. And even without any potential darkness within Connors, the Lizard should be dark enough to persuade readers to be intimidated by him and respect him. You also have to think of how terrifying it must be for Connors' consciousness to exist within the Lizard when the creature is completely unleashed and fully in control. It's a complete lack of control in a way that is probably super terrifying for Curt. Number 8, Hunter in the Darkness. The Hunter in the Darkness is an interesting character, and one that honestly we do not talk enough about on Top 10 Nerd. And also super complex, to be honest. Villain, sometimes a bit of an anti-hero or an ally to heroes. While Wolverine did once free the werewolf-like being from a trap years ago, the Hunter still remained an adversary of Wolverine. It has been implied in the comics that there is a sense of camaraderie between the two at times. When we first met the Hunter in Darkness, it was made to seem like, and in fact some characters in the issue did think, that the Hunter was actually a more feral version of Logan. Number 7, Taskmaster. Everyone knows that Anthony Masters is insane when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. He has photographic reflexes, which allow him to learn any fight move or style just by observing or battling against someone, which makes him pretty hard to beat if you don't have some kind of crazy superpower set. Taskmaster might not be on anyone's A-list, but he sure has fought a ton of well-loved superheroes, including Moon Knight. Moon Knight himself doesn't have any crazy superpowers, but he does have a Batman-like ability to strike fear into the hearts of almost all of his opponents, no matter how skilled they are, which was really the only thing that made it possible for him to defeat Tony here. Number 6, Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and more respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. Look at what Mystique managed to do only a few years ago in X-Men's Inferno, or Chameleon in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as other people, but he also is pretty good at hatching his own plans as well. Number 5, Mystique. Mystique is someone who isn't particularly, or at least outwardly, powerful when it comes to what she's capable of and her power set, and for this reason many people have taken to underestimating her abilities. Here's why I would advise against that. 2021's Inferno issue number 4. In the Inferno series, it's revealed that while Mystique tried to play by Krakoa's rules, when she learned she wasn't going to get what she wanted from Magneto and Professor X, no matter what she did in the name of the Mutant Nation, she decided to take matters into her own hands, as Mystique so often does. I mean, that's why we love her, right? Disguising herself as many different people, she was able to easily ensure that Destiny was in fact resurrected, against the wishes of the heads of the Quiet Council. She also put into motion plans to make sure that Destiny would garner a spot on the Quiet Council, and then she was almost successful in enacting a revenge revenge. And then she was almost successful in enacting revenge on Moira X for keeping her love, Destiny, from her for so long. Mystique here proves that while her power set may have become OP over the years, it's still really her mind and her sense of cunning that makes her honestly so dangerous. Number 4, Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be, well, a not so real threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world. Or well, even being defeated, he still kind of did. His plan here was to convince everyone he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, I'm still not convinced, he actually still managed to succeed somewhat. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting him to kill the entire X-Men team and School himself. Yikes. Number 3, Destiny. Destiny is one of those villains that is severely underrated. I mean, most people don't even think of her when they think about Marvel villains. Even when they think about X-Men villains, she doesn't happen to be one of the folks that first comes to your mind. And yet she is one of the most powerful out there, despite being very squishy, honestly. Even dead, she is somewhat of a threat in the comics due to her previously recorded premonitions. You see, Destiny is the lover of Mystique, and her mutant power is that she can see into the future. The more likely a future becomes, the more she can see that future, and her visions have often been known to be quite accurate. We don't have a lot of characters who can see into the future, and most of them tend to be on the hero side of things that do have that power, so it's interesting to see a villain with such rarely seen powers, but especially when you consider, her alignment as a villain. Number 2, Madelyne Pryor. Of course, I have to include the Goblin Queen. You guys know how much I love her. Anytime I do a list like this, she's one of the first people that comes to my mind, and we gotta talk about her. Madelyne Pryor is a woman who seems to easily be forgotten and shelved, which is surprising considering how great of a threat she posed in the original Inferno story. Currently in the comics, Madelyne Pryor is making a comeback, even going on to lead her own X-Men team, nicknamed the Dark X-Men editorially. Madelyne Pryor has threatened the entire world with her dark rituals and demon pacts before, and though often forgotten, she really shouldn't be, considering just how dangerous and how powerful she is. Number 1, the Maker. The Maker is the alternate version of Reed Richards. I've always felt that Richards actually might make a better villain than a hero, and the Maker seems to have been this thought made manifest, living proof of it being so. The Maker initially started out as a hero, leader of the team known as the Fantastic Four. However, in the Ultimate Universe where he hails from, the original Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, his and Sue's future of marital bliss was not as guaranteed. And in fact, after the tragedy of Ultimatum and Sue Storm turning down his marriage proposal, Richards got a different perspective on life, which inevitably resulted in him becoming a villain. In this universe, Reed had a rough childhood, and part of where his villainy started was in turning on his own family. A family that had honestly mistreated him for years. Yeah, in this reality, Reed commits patricide and matricide to get back at his parents. And that's just the beginning of his story as a villain. Extremely counter to his Earth 616 alternate. That's about it. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.